We are on a mission to save and revitalize independent pharmacy. On the Catalyst podcast, we dive into current events that are shaping how pharmacists approach their patients and their businesses. Fuel your passion for pharmacy, one conversation at a time.
3, 2, 1, 0. Ignition.
Welcome to the Catalyst Pharmacy Podcast. I'm your host, Jeff Key, president of PioneerRx. Today, I'm here with Josh and Marsha.
Hi, I'm Josh Howland, vice president of clinical strategy.
And I'm Marsha Bivins, director of marketing.
Today, we're excited to be here with Richard Waithe, president of VUCA Health and host of the RX Radio podcast.
Well, I'd love to share a super, Jeff, as you know, I'm super excited to be here for the first of all. So thank you all for having me on. And one thing I'd love to share, a funny story, I think a good way to maybe kick this off is, so I'm a pharmacist down in Miami, right? We have
I'm in Miami.
Very multicultural environment down here. But I was working in a pharmacy that was heavily Hispanic population. And kind of forced me to learn Spanish, at least pharmacy Spanish. So like I can have a pretty decent conversation only about someone's prescription in a pharmacy, right?
Okay.
I'm taking care. There's two people in line. I'm taking care of one patient only speaking Spanish, and so I'm like, señora, tiene preguntas? Do you have any questions? Muchas gracias. Have a nice day. But like I had a legitimate good conversation in Spanish. The second customer coming up is a regular, like I've known her for at least over a year. And she's just like, Richard, your Spanish has improved so much. Like you like from when I first met you to now, like you're able to now speak, you can pronounce things properly. Let's call her Mrs. Gonzalez for sake of things. And she was just like, I'm just so impressed with how you've been able to connect with your patients. And, I'm happy that you've been here for the last year. And I was just like, Miss Gonzalez, you speak English? This lady, for some reason, has just been like, I guess maybe she wanted to teach me Spanish or something. But, I was just like, man, this whole time you've spoken English and you've just only been communicating with me in Spanish. But anyway, so fun story about me in Miami and the journey down here.
So I'm nice. Picturing Richard ordering food in a Mexican restaurant, like a real Mexican restaurant in Miami, but he's using like pharmacy Spanish. So there's accidental butt creams and things like that.
I'll have the enchilada with cream applied twice daily.
No refills.
No, it's funny. My wife is actually from El Paso and her whole family's Mexican, and her grandparents pretend like they don't speak English very well. And I found out her grandpa actually understands a lot of English. When we were sitting around at Christmas one time, and we were just sitting around the table having a good time, and I hear her grandpa just like cracking up laughing because he's understood everything that's gone on. I knew this guy for like 3 years before I knew that he understood every single word I said.
That's awesome.
So that's like Marsha's daughter's taking Spanish, and she's like, I can't speak it. I can understand it, I can read it, I
can't speak it.
She's not getting the whole speaking thing.
Nope.
Although that's way harder with the whole Zoom class, I guess.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, I took Spanish in high school, and
Although really you think with the whole Zoom thing, they should have just made it immersive, right? Get a teacher in Spain or get a teacher in Mexico to join in, right? Make it I
don't think that'd make much of a difference.
You don't think so?
Well, I mean, when I worked in retail, my Spanish was okay because you have to.
Yeah.
Right? Like when you're in a 45-minute class in high school.
Yeah. I can see where you could learn to listen, because even if it was immersive, where the teacher didn't speak English, right? You're still only learning to hear it.
Right.
And kind of understand, kind of get, I get what she's angry.
It's pretty helpful at a pharmacy because you have your team that's also speaking, you have your technicians likely that also speaks both English and Spanish. So it really is kind of like the immersion technique of trying to learn a new language. So
yeah. All right. So Richard, for those people here who don't know you, just give us a little short about what you're doing today, and then we'll kind of hit a little background.
Yes. So today I am the president of a company called VUCA Health. We create medication education videos and license that video out to health systems, pharmacies, health plans. And one of our flagship products is putting a QR code on patients' labels that give patients now access to video content. And I'm also the host of RX Radio, a podcast that just interviews other pharmacists and learning about the different ways and pharmacists are having roles out in the industry. And then kind of personal here at home, I have a 7-month-old that I'm currently trying to figure out how to take care of with my wife. And I love to snowboard at least once a year. And I do that. I want to say I do that today, obviously, but I kind of missed a year during the pandemic, but hoping to get back out on the runs in the next year or so.
Richard, I think we're spirit animals.
Are we?
I have a 3-year-old that I'm still trying to figure out how to keep alive, and I also like to snowboard.
Oh, okay, nice. Where at? Do you only go to one place, or do you like to travel to different?
I'm slope promiscuous, but mostly in Colorado.
Okay.
If you give me a shot, I'll probably ski anything that you'll let me, including
Nice.
small hills and or drainage ditches. I'm from Texas, right? I'll ski whatever has snow on it and will allow me.
Where are your favorite slopes?
So I used to go at least once a year. I would try. Every year I would go to a different place. I always wanted to try somewhere new. About 3 years ago, I went to Park City, and it was absolutely fell in love. It was the first time that I had convinced my wife, let's go back to this place. It was the first time we went back to it. And ever since then, I mean, it's been my favorite place to go. Park City in Utah is amazing, but Mammoth was pretty awesome in California as well. Snowbird was the most challenging, I would say, of slopes.
Wow.
So if anyone's looking for a challenge out, I think that's also out in Utah. But Park City, I would have to say is my favorite.
There's some cute little 3-year-olds on skis doing the runs. For a family first time, it's really great for the kids.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm seeing on social media these 2-year-olds just ripping it. I'm okay.
They got the low center of gravity.
Yeah.
There's no falling to do. They just kind of fall. They just kind of squat.
Yeah, but they have the short legs, so pizza's a little harder.
Yeah, I have to accept that it's easier for them, right? I just have to accept that. That makes me feel better.
Yeah, my first snowboarding experience, I went when I was 21, I think, and I skateboarded when I was younger, and a friend of mine who'd grown up in skiing said, "Hey man, you don't need lessons, just jump on." That was the worst idea in the history of all time.
That gentleman is a liar.
No. We didn't speak for the rest of the day. And there's I remember a point where I'm laying in the snow and I'm still questioning whether or not I'm alive. And this little kid, probably 5 or 6, comes up, sprays me with snow. And he's like, "You okay, bro?" And I'd never felt more hurt in my ego in my entire life.
That'll hit your soul.
Yeah. I was like, I'm definitely going to lay here and die now.
Yeah, snowboarding is so hard. I mean, just to learn it. I mean, I think it's one of those things where once you kind of get the hang of it, it becomes a lot easier. But I remember after my first day, I immediately went to Sports Authority because I played football when I was younger, and I knew that they sell those things where you can just wrap around your tailbone protection, hip protection. Yep. Immediately bought that. Put that under my clothes just so I can have a second day of knowing that I was going to be falling a lot and not feeling those bruises. So, but also I love it. I also started in college. I was in a fraternity. They did a bus trip to Tennessee, and just from there absolutely fell in love, and I've been doing it at least once a year ever since.
Is there skiing in Tennessee?
There's a place called Gatlinburg. Okay. Is a very baby mountain. That's kind of embarrassing when you've gone to a real place, but that was literally the first time I experienced snow and being able to jump on a snowboard.
You spend 20 minutes in line and 2 minutes going down. Kind of like Six Flags, right? Or Disney.
You can walk up the hill.
65-foot run.
Yeah. It's crazy. All right. So VUCA, how many employees? How big is a VUCA?
We're very small, very small company. We have from day-to-day operations, about 10 people, but on any given quarter, we might flex up to about 30 different people that are involved in production and just QA and quality for all that video content. But we're still small and growing, and we're a virtual company. We've kind of fared well through the pandemic while everyone kind of forced to go home. I mean, we've been a virtual company for a couple of years now.
So how many? You said operations. How many of those are pharmacists? And I know you guys use pharmacy students as well to help with some of the content. How's that going?
Yeah. We actually have about 10 students a month that join us on a virtual rotation, and which we did start about a year ago, which actually was crazy because we were able to help a lot of students because they had sites that were canceling on them because of the pandemic. So some students were like in jeopardy of graduating. So we were able to whip up a virtual rotation for them. So it's kind of continued on. We're taking about 10 students a month. We have about 4 pharmacists that are involved in creating content with reviewing, and then that also the students are also very impactful with making sure that content's being reviewed and yearly and checked, and then passed off to the pharmacist for further QA.
So do you interact much with the students?
Yeah, so I'm like the official preceptor. So like I'm on the weekly calls with them, which I think is important because for them to be able to, I guess, like get a different perspective. And it's funny because Jeff, on our last conversation, we talked about how you were in academia, but it didn't really seem like you might have been, someone that would be in academia. And I don't think I'm someone that would be the traditional academia person, but these students don't have access to people outside of academia a lot of times. So I want to try to make sure I'm involved as much as possible with their rotation, just to give them the different perspective of like, this is what's going to happen when you graduate, and this is what things are like outside of the academic world. So I do try to interact with them as much as possible.
All right, so let's play favorites. Who was your favorite student ever?
Yeah, I don't know if I have a favorite student ever.
Come on, everybody has a favorite.
There are students that I think I like the ones that ask really good questions. Like the thought-provoking questions that like even gets me a couple times. Those are the ones that I'm like, okay, this is my favorite student here because the questions that they're asking. I think from we have them submit assignments and do work like that. I mean, that seems almost like a commodity at times, but some of the intangibles that start to stand out are the people that I think that ask really good questions.
I'm going to shift the hot seat here for a second. So like you said, Jeff was in academia also. Something I'm not sure you entirely know, but some of his students now work for him. So who was your favorite?
So that would be heavily pressured. That would probably Stephen Culver.
Gotcha.
He really got questions, and he got the whole rounded of it's a business problem that we're trying to solve out there. We're trying to create solutions for people, and even got that as a student. So there.
It's funny because I would say this rotation is actually a great recruiting tool. Like I'm actually have like a list of people that I'm like, okay, when I'm ready to hire for that particular role, I already have a couple people in mind. So it's actually been great for that purpose as well.
So we know when we get ready to hire another pharmacist, we know where to go get our list.
And I've got a list myself.
You've got a list?
Yeah. I mean, I hired a couple of really good interns at DaVita, and then a couple of people that I've met through, working at trade shows or through other organizations. That's the best part about them. But yeah, I love hiring interns because you know what you're going to get.
All right, so now let's do a butterfly effect. So how did you get here? How did you get to VUCA?
Yeah, so it's funny. I was a student and interned at VUCA when I was in pharmacy school. So David Medvedev is the original founder of the company, and back in 2012, 13ish, when they were just getting started up, they were looking for students to help start creating the library of the content. So they sent an email out. I went to University of Florida out in Orlando, the Orlando campus, and they sent an email out. Literally 4 people responded to that email, and I was one of them. And the requirements were you have to be a student, you don't have to read. So I was like, check that box. And the job was you can work from home, you can create content, and I was a student. So you're telling me I can learn, and then you'll pay me to like learn something. It was just a great opportunity for me, and that was my introduction into VUCA. And then fast forward 3 years ago, David left to create Aspen and wanted to bring in a new team to kind of run the operations, which is how I kind of got my role there. But as a student, I was really passionate about community pharmacy in pharmacy school. I started off with Target. That's where I kind of got my first kind of official pharmacy job as a first year as an intern there. Worked with them until that transition over to CVS, and then I also worked with Publix Pharmacy. But community pharmacy was like a passion for me, and I started to kind of hone in on patient education, which was an interesting fit for me because I was a terrible high school student. Like I mostly did sports.
We got the football player thing.
I played football. I wrestled. Wrestling actually became one of my main sports at some point. But I was very competitive, but the academics thing just wasn't there for me. Barely graduated high school, let me tell you. Barely got into FIU, which is where I did my undergrad. But when I got to FIU, the competitiveness shifted over to like saying, okay, this is now the game. The game is getting in, becoming a pharmacist, getting into a good school, getting a career. So that because of that game sense and the competition of me kind of drove, I think drove to where I am now. But the reason I kind of bring up me being a terrible student is I had to make a lot of complicated things very simple. And it took a lot for me to, like, whether it was physics, whether it was organic chemistry, just figure out ways to like communicate these things simply and effectively. And what I started to realize was throughout pharmacy school, patients that were dealing with health issues were dealing with very complicated situations, and they weren't getting the education put to them simply and effectively. And I started to realize that that's my fit. That's exactly where I need to like put my energy towards. And community pharmacy for me was the best place to do that. And then also kind of coming into VUCA was also a way to kind of like expand on that and make that a much farther and greater reach. So I think that's kind of the kind of different pathways that kind of led me to VUCA now.
Interesting. So some of the stuff that VUCA puts out, right, with your, I guess, the counseling companion stuff with like the QR codes, how does that play with, a chain retail pharmacy? I worked in a chain retail pharmacy, and aside from me and a handful of others, there wasn't a lot of counseling going on. Was that part of the driver of what you guys are trying to develop as well?
Yeah, one thing that we did not want this to be was a replacement of that counseling. We did try to mimic the counseling. Like, we wanted to be when a patient opens a video, we want them to have the feeling of they're talking to a pharmacist. But the goal was never to actually replace that or to serve as since you're not going to counsel, just give them this video. But what I think one thing that we did realize was important was that trying to counsel patients at a pharmacy or even at discharge, let's say in the health system space, is actually not the best time to try to counsel them. You have to do it obviously legally, and you have to still try your best to. But at the end of the day, patients, when they're at the pharmacy, they're usually in a rush. They're usually either on their way to work or on their way back home from work. So, they're trying to get home. And it's about what sort of education do they have now when they're home and on their own time, and when they're most comfortable and ready to consume that content and that information whenever they want to. And that was the intention. The intention was really to be able to provide education to patients when they needed it on their own time in a way that they can simply understand and take action on.
Does that target more trying to think about what could go wrong or abandonment? When you're thinking about making those videos, are you thinking about somebody's getting a drug the first time and maybe deciding whether or not they're going to take it, and they're going to Google and see they get this side effect and this side effect and this side effect, and they'll be like, I'm too young to start taking medication?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so I think that's kind of spot on. The goal, issues with prescriptions, whether it's adherence, whether it's side effects or adverse events, a lot of time the source of that is health literacy and understanding why they're taking it, why it's important to take it the way it's prescribed. So the goal for us is I think it's trying to alleviate the what can go wrong when taking it, but also try to prevent things that can go wrong if you take it improperly.
Yeah. So Josh has been in his position, deals with a lot of different state pharmacy organizations. And he was bragging on, he was like, one thing I know, Richard's somehow he convinced 50 states to do this. He said, that's an amazing feat.
Yeah. I was like, that might be the most impressive thing that VUCA's done, is get 50 states Board of Pharmacy to actually agree on one thing.
Yeah. And let me tell you, the challenge of that is it took literally, I think, 7 years. If you start from like the day one, like this is when we're going to do this, to last year, I think we got our last Washington, D.C., technically not a state, but part of that. They have their own Board of Pharmacy. It's such a long process. The way that we did it was different for every state. Some states where we did it through an email. Some states we had to fly to the actual Board of Pharmacy meeting with a PowerPoint presentation. present, then answer questions, then possibly come back if someone else had like another question. So the process for that was intense. But the crazy thing is though, is that in this day and age, it doesn't make sense that pharmacies are required to print paper and hand it to a patient. And what's really interesting too, and what also made it a little easier, although 7 years was a lot of work and a lot of time it took to do this, was that most of the regulation actually doesn't say that you have to print paper and hand it to the patient. Most of it actually just says that you have to just give it to the patient or make it available to the patient, let's say. So a lot of times we were mostly just saying, hey, we just want you to know that there's new technologies available now, and we're beyond having to use paper for everything. And your regulations actually doesn't specifically say that. So that made it easier as well. I think whoever was drafting these laws, which a lot of them are kind of copy and paste and used across different boards, whoever drafted that for some reason did kind of leave it open to the potential of technology coming into play. But we still wanted to make sure we crossed our T's and dotted our I's and went to these boards and make sure we got that confirmation from them.
Right. Well, and and another long time coming thing that it goes is like a lot of the stuff revolves around a QR code, and historically the United States has been poor users of QR codes, right? Like South Korea, everything's got a QR code. Here, not so much. But COVID drove that to an absolute extreme, right? Like everything's got a QR code now. Have you guys seen some uptick on people using and scanning the QR codes more frequently now than say a year ago or a year and a half ago?
So there has been not only an uptick with utilization from patients, but just more people wanting something like this. Like our customer demand actually grew a little bit for people wanting. And what also made it much more easier for us was our need to not explain how a QR code works. That was a huge barrier for us as well. Before the pandemic was one, explaining what a QR code was, and then letting them know how it worked was a challenge. But you're right, especially some of the Asian countries, like I visited Japan before, and the QR code technology is everywhere over there, and you can see how we're behind. And what I think also did us a disservice, I don't know if disservice is the right word, but what also just wasn't helpful was that when Apple introduced the QR code technology into their camera, they did it like in secret, borderline. Like they didn't tell anyone.
Yeah, like one day it just
this
worked.
Has been available for so long. And a lot of people didn't know that you can just open up your camera phone, hover it over a QR code, and then the little link pops down. But for some reason, I guess Apple just was not keen on making that like a huge marketing push. So a lot of people didn't even know that they had the capability of scanning one. So that also made it easier. But yeah, I mean, there's been a huge uptick in not only utilization, but demand for it. And I think it's just easier now that when people go to restaurants, they're used to a QR code for their menu. And now it's slowly becoming the expectation for people that are getting their prescriptions. They want, can I get more access to something very easily? And the way to do that would be through a QR code.
You've got a lot of success in this last year, especially like I heard a little bit and saw a little bit of it. You didn't really go post much more than that about your hashtag 10 and 2.
Mm-hmm.
So, but I did hear about that, how that came about. So would you share that with these two who probably don't know what 10 and 2, hashtag 10 and 2 is?
Yeah. So when I was in community pharmacy, I had this dream. And it really started where, and obviously, like, I don't want to get like Martin Luther King here, but like I had like an actual dream of like, I just had a dream of myself being torn out of a pharmacy. Like it was, and I think it was like a storm or a tornado. I don't know what it was, but somehow I was just being ripped out of pharmacy and like out of the actual like physical pharmacy. And it was a dream that I think solidified a lot of intuition that I had that I wanted to do more in pharmacy. Like I wanted to go beyond just working at a community pharmacy behind the counter and counseling patients and doing my thing there. I had a lot more that I wanted to do. But one thing I did not have was the time or the resources to do it. So what I did find was the time period between 10 p.m. and 2 a.m. was a very productive and something I had every single day available to me. Time 4 hours to like build things that I'm passionate about, build a brand, start creating content, start learning. And so I came up with this thing called hashtag 10 and 2, which is funny because on Twitter, you can actually, if you go to the hashtag 10TO2, you can scroll back years and you see for a period of like years, every night I would post like the update of like, hey guys, I'm here 10 to 2. And every single day, whether I worked 9 to 9 at a pharmacy, that means I would drive home, get home at 9:30, shower, do my thing. And then from 10 to 2 in the morning, I am working. I'm building a brand. I'm recording a podcast. That's when I started RX Radio. That's when I learned how to write articles on Medium. It's the time that I wrote my first book in. All during that 10 to 2 time but it was every single day for a period of years. And I think that was kind of like, a lot of times people might see, for example, going from Publix to VUCA. So Publix was my last role in community pharmacy. Going from Publix to VUCA, a lot of people would see, well, that's really interesting. That's like a jump that you made to that. But what people don't realize is that's years of like work culminating to like lead up to that point for me to actually be able to kind of make that transition seamlessly. So, but that hashtag 10 to 2 for me was just the time that I put in the work ethic that I knew that was needed to kind of like start to like do the things that I really wanted to do.
And how's that working out with the toddler? With the infant, not quite a year.
10 to 2 means something totally different now.
Yeah, now it's like it's luckily though that prepared me for him like being awake. So like I didn't know that I was also training to be awake and alert for when a toddler needs to be picked up from his crib. So it's much more difficult now. I'm going to bed because like we're still trying to figure out his sleep situation. So like we have different shifts with my wife that I'm trying to figure out. So sometimes I go to sleep like around 12 now, and I kind of shifted to like maybe 9 to 12 is when I'm trying to be as productive as possible while she's kind of on her shift. And then I take over at 1 or between 12 and 1 to see if I can get him to go to bed. But it's been a challenge. And I'm really waiting for the day that he goes to sleep for the whole night. So I can go back to my like regular kind of hashtag 10 to 2 because there's still a lot that I want to get done. But it's been a nice break though. It's been a nice break and he's been a delight. He's like the cutest little human that we were able to create. And,
I saw
it's
the
been a
pictures.
delight.
Full head of hair.
Yeah.
So much hair.
We have no idea. So he's an extremely mixed baby. We have no idea like who he looks like. My wife is she's half white, half Chinese. My family's from Trinidad and Tobago, which has like this like other like pot of people that I still don't really know exactly where I'm from technically. And we just have no idea like who he looks like, but he's the cutest little baby.
So was he born with a ton of hair or was that like a right away?
They're cute, so we don't kill them.
That's true.
I heard that's like one of the main survival tactics.
I always say that God made babies cute, so we didn't kill them, and teenagers so that we'd be glad to send them off.
Yeah, no, he was born with a good chunk of hair.
In a weird like non-scientific way, did your wife have a lot of heartburn while she was pregnant?
The wives' tale.
So it was weird because my wife had like crazy heartburn when she was pregnant, and Ellie popped out with like 4-inch hair. And
she did.
It was just random. Yeah. Also, I was super impressed with the sonograph people where they were like, "Oh, your baby's got a lot of hair." And I'm like, "That looks like a blob, man."
Yeah, no, he came out with a good head of hair. Both of our mothers, like my mom and her mom, have really light eyes. Like her mom has blue, and my mom has green eyes. So now his eyes are like a bluish gray. So it just adding to like not looking like either my wife or myself. So it's really funny.
Yep. Hey, so tell us a little bit about your book. You said first book. I thought you only had one book. So tell us about the book. So
in my mind, because I'm like in the process of writing some others, but the first one, it's called First Time Pharmacist, and it is very short book that is geared towards people that have maybe worked in a pharmacy but just don't have a lot of experience inside of working at a pharmacy, and it has just a couple nuggets into like just making your day, your quality of life better as a community pharmacist. And for example, one of the things I have in there is how like perception is reality, where if you're dealing with a patient that is picking up a prescription, and let's say they want to wait for it, if you tell them come back in 30 minutes, and it's only been 10 minutes, but they feel like it's been 30 minutes, your life is going to be a little difficult potentially. But if you tell them, hey, it'll be ready in 30 minutes, it's 5 o'clock now, so that means at 5:30 it'll be ready for you. You set a little bit more expectations around the reality. So even if they come back in 45 minutes, a lot of times your quality of life is a lot better there, because they knew that it wasn't until 5:30 that I was going to be ready. You didn't just give them a 30-minute wait time. So I try to throw in little nuggets in there to try to help people, just like things that you just didn't learn in school, and that like typical training working at a pharmacy doesn't usually teach you. I tried to take some of the years I had under my belt in community pharmacy and just put that into a book to kind of help like new pharmacists and even new technicians kind of help navigate and better kind of have a better community pharmacy experience. Like one of the things too is like, the whole happy wife, happy life type of things. I think one of the things I have in there is just like, it just doesn't sound as good, but like happy patient, like happy pharmacy team. Like that's literally how I think you just make your life easier. Like the better relationships you have with your patients, the much easier, like if there's a problem that goes on in the pharmacy, like if an order didn't come in or, the refill didn't come in from the doctor, that relationship that you have with the patient will really depend on how they react to those news. So just little nuggets like that in that first book.
Tell everybody the name of your book.
It's called First Time Pharmacist.
Okay, and where can you buy it?
I got it on Amazon last night.
Amazon.
Yeah, you get it on Amazon. I think like
that's where we cue
Barnes
picture
and
of book.
Yeah, I downloaded it last night. It's First Pharmacist, everything you didn't learn in school or on the job training. And I only got like a few chapters in. Like I said, I downloaded it last night.
What did you learn?
No, it's a good overall kind of expectation of, you go to work for a big chain like CVS or Walgreens, like you mentioned, and it's just pretty much setting the expectation. Like this quote here, think about this. When you're deciding between caring more for your corporation or caring for your patients, things to keep in mind.
Okay, and so keep in mind, what does it say about caring more about?
Well,
your patients?
this particular section kind of dive more that CVS, Walgreens don't care about the patients. They care about how many scripts can you fill in an hour and how many e-scripts can you process, and they care more about your production time and not so much about the patients.
And this segment sponsored by CVS Health.
Yeah, it's so easy to fall in that trap. When you're a public company, it's really hard to fall in the trap because every quarter you got to make your numbers. You're going to report how you're doing every 3 months. It's just a horrible trap. And the value of a smaller business is it's much easier for them to live by. One of my heroes, Zig Ziglar, one of the things he always said is you can have anything you want in life if you just help enough other people get what they want, right? And that's the deal. If you can make happy patients, everything else is going to come. If you can make happy, healthy patients, that's why we do the Save and Revitalize Independent Pharmacy, because if we can make the pharmacy better, if we can make independent pharmacy better, if we can make them make more money, then we do better, right? And we're going to be successful because of it.
Right. And a lot of what we do here also kind of around your deal of setting expectations, we're really big on setting expectations and making sure that there's a realistic chance that we can exceed those expectations. So I think it's really smart. Like I used to tell patients 15 minutes all the time, but if you don't give them a concept of when 15 minutes is up, you're right. Like it's all about them sitting in your small little lobby.
Yeah, they might not look at their watch.
Looking at you every 15 seconds.
Right. Yeah, they're just staring at you like it's in a box. I can see the box. Why isn't it labeled?
Is that my box? Why are you doing somebody else's box instead of my box?
Yeah, I remember seeing a graph once, and it was just about like, it had like the intersecting lines of like expectations versus reality, and like it had a huge impact on happiness. Mm-hmm. And so for me, that's just always been an important, making sure that you close that gap as much as possible increases your happiness level. So just in day to day. But yeah, I mean, back to the corporation thing. I mean, the thing about corporations is like I see them as like an organism that has all these different parts. Like the people at these corporations are genuinely caring people and have genuinely good reasonings behind a lot of the things that they do. And I work with them now, and I realize that, but the problem is that when it gets down to the level of like the individual pharmacist, it just there's a huge disconnect there. And pharmacists sometimes at these large corporations feel like they're having to choose between their own sanity, the metrics and goals that were set by corporate, and actually taking care of the patient. And I feel like that. And I feel like when you're put in that position, I think there has to be, a hierarchy of like what you need to put as importance. But that definitely changes when you're at a smaller independent.
So your second book, let's talk about that one. You said you're writing more.
Yeah. So I'm very almost done with it, which is why I'll be comfortable talking about it and not thinking that it's not anything crazy. But in community pharmacy, I think that most training, when people are onboarded, they get taught what to do. So if you're doing return to stock, it's like, this is how you do your return to stock process. This is how to do a refill. This is how to send a fax to the doctor. But what a lot doesn't happen is the whys behind it all. And I feel like the whys behind why you're doing things in the pharmacy, I think is greatly lacking in training for people that just come on. So for me, the next book is going to be about, this is the why you're doing this process, which is going to be essentially every single pharmacy almost all the time has basically all the same processes. They do them differently, but the whys behind them are almost always the same. So it's basically going to be like a book of someone that's never stepped foot in the pharmacy, which the goal is going to be someone to be able to hand that to their new technician or to their new pharmacy staff member and say, like, here's a short book as to why we do a lot of things that we do. And then you're going to learn how to do them.
Nice. So what's next for VUCA?
So for VUCA, we are trying to figure out ways to get innovative with our content. Right now, we have basically created almost 95% of medications that typically get dispensed at a community pharmacy. Actually, we have a specific video for that, all the way down to the NDC level. But we want to start expanding that. We want to start going into compounding medications because there's a huge opportunity there with educating people about medications that are created specifically for them. And while that's a challenge all in itself to create a video for that one person, but our goal is to try to get as close to possible as creating videos that can reach a certain set of people that are receiving compounded medications. Medications like people that are taking care of pets and animals. We want to get in the veterinary space. We don't really have any video content there. So for us, it's really about making sure we can innovate on our content and starting to help the people that are still like kind of left lost with like education and loss of where to find that education, trying to be able to educate them on helping them be caregivers for themselves or for their pets. So
as a person who has multiple pets and has delivered medications to multiple pets, what do you see that video look like? Are you talking about, because dosing's different, obviously, how wrapping it in peanut butter is not always a great option. So like, what kind of things would you think about in terms of making a video for a dog or something like that?
Well, obviously the dog's not going to watch the video. So
right. Yeah.
But you can do a filter and it look like a dog's doing the video.
I mean, my dog might actually watch the video.
My cat would for sure.
My dog's super lazy and loves sitting on the couch watching TV. So
that's my cat.
Yeah, I think there's whether it's being able to give a specific dose, which we've already looked at, like bringing in actual animals to like the studio and doing things like that. But whether it's teaching them how to like some tips and tricks on how to give doses, but I think just educating them on like what to expect, what the medication that they're actually giving, because a lot of times people want to know, like, what am I giving my animal? Like, what is this actually going to do to them?
Right.
How harmful is it going to be to them? So it's really very similar to people taking medications for humans. It's really just about educating them around all the different aspects that come along with actually someone or an animal taking a medication, which is, why are they taking it? What can you expect in terms of side effects potentially? What are some serious things to look out for and take action on if you actually see that thing? And then tips and tricks on how to administer it properly.
I had a dog with an osteosarcoma, which is basically a tumor in his femur. And, giving them medications like, giving your dog Benadryl, okay, it's easy, doesn't really do a whole lot. But like delivering like really crazy medications, like dogs show pain differently. They do all kinds of other stuff. So it's interesting to see how that, I'll be playing around with that as soon as it's available. So
yeah, a lot of community pharmacies are getting into doing more pet meds.
And there's a lot of training programs now for pharmacists on pet meds and things like that. So
Yeah, we got access to the Plums, library that is really helpful for pharmacists. So we're really going to try to go down that route and try to make sure we have that video content available for them. And in addition to the content side of things, from a technology perspective, one thing I'm really passionate about is the voice space. I think over the last year, obviously a lot of things have changed and a lot of projects and traction got diverted to, making sure people can retain their current kind of businesses and things like that. But voice, I think, is a space that's heavily kind of was catching a lot of traction prior to the pandemic, and I do believe is going to start to catch traction again as things kind of move back into normal, where people are going to start expecting using Siri, the Apple Home, or Alexa or Google Home, where they can ask it, hey, please refill my inhaler. And, on the back end, that's going to have some connections back to Pioneer to say, hey, this patient wants his medication refilled. But in addition to that, I think they're going to start to ask, hey, can you tell me more about that inhaler I just picked up? So we want to have eventually our content to be able to be played on these devices, whether it's just the audio itself or whether it's an Echo Show device, which has a screen that's all voice activated, but it still has a screen on there. We want to be able to have our video content be able to be played on that. So in terms of what's next for us is just making sure that we can have the technology and infrastructure in place to have content ready on these new devices that are starting to become a lot more prevalent.
Yeah, the worry about the Alexa app is that you're helping. That one day they say, hey, order my inhaler, Alexa, and she says, hey, did you know you can get that from Amazon for in only 2 days?
Well, that's where the branding and the relationships come into play. And that's where I think independents are really going to shine, because they're going to say, no, I don't want to get it from Amazon. I want to get it from, Hobbs Pharmacy. So, I think that's where the importance of the branding and the marketing is going to really have to shine. Because I do think, similar to like, even if Apple wanted to do things like that, I mean, I still think even though these companies create their own products, I think they're still vehicles of access. And I think that's where brands are able to shine by utilizing these vehicles of access to get access to their brands. So I hope, community pharmacies will be able to market themselves and be able to fight that sort of, bigger players kind of coming in and trying to steal that market share.
So I'm going to bounce back to the hashtag 10 to 2. That's where you started your podcast. You got the idea for that. What made you start a podcast?
So very similar to me wanting to do more, I also realized I did not know a lot. And in pharmacy school, most of the exposure I had was either to community pharmacy and to health system pharmacy and like residencies and things like that. And, sometimes schools try to do a good job with having like panels of people to try to expose you to the differences. But the panel is basically filled with community pharmacists and people that are working in a hospital. And I just knew that there was a lot more going on out there, but I just didn't know. And at the time, podcasts were kind of becoming a lot more prevalent. And I consider myself a people person. I like to communicate. I like to talk. So I'm like, how hard is it to actually start a podcast? But then I also realized how much leverage comes with that, and my ability to now send a message on LinkedIn or a DM to someone, say, hey, I want to learn about, what you're doing. Would you like to be, a guest on my show? And it just made that friction almost non-existent. And it just allowed me to start exploring. It was very selfish, honestly, but it allowed me to start exploring other industries and what else people were doing out there. But I realized that, and a lot of things happen, a lot of great companies and ideas and things like that happen when someone's kind of scratching their own itch and just trying to do something that they would have loved to have. It ends up being something great for a community of people or great for an industry. So luckily, with the distribution methods available out there, I was able to, put this out in the open. And but the goal was really to learn about and try to understand how people got to where they were, understand what kind of roles pharmacists are now starting to have out in the industry, out in healthcare, that is just not really talked about or taught about in school. And it's been a great journey. I mean, it's kind of crazy now that I think I started in 2017. So I'm starting to get feedback from students now they're students now in pharmacy school, but they had listened to the RX radio before even thinking about becoming a pharmacist. So it's kind of cool now kind of seeing some of these things kind of come back full circle, where people, whereas like myself included, before wanted to go into pharmacy because they knew it was a stable job, it was a good salary and things like that. But now people are coming into it from a passion perspective because they want to be an oncology pharmacist, or they want to work in emergency medicine. So having like something that is central that people can go and like learn about all these different ways pharmacists are having a role has been awesome. And that's really why I started it, for my own kind of like understanding, but it's now being able to help a lot of people. And now it's also turning into something that's helping if someone's working on something, or, hopefully one day when Pioneer launches something new, we want to come on and talk about it. It's a good way to help out partners and get some exposure there and get the word out on certain initiatives and engagements that people are working on.
It's definitely some new outlets for marketing. That's for sure.
So it's RX Radio. They can listen to it on where? Spotify, Apple.
Yeah, any of their favorite podcasting platforms, you can find it. Spotify, Apple Podcasts, SoundCloud, Overcast, all those main players. You can listen to it there.
Any thought? I think I asked you this already, but I'm gonna ask you again. Any thought about going video? What do you think about video versus?
Honestly, I do want to start doing video. I think which there's a new platform I bought. It's like called Ecamm or something. It's supposed to make it really easy to like just send someone a link and create video experiences. The goal for me is to start doing more video, especially as I start to now think about like it's time to probably start growing a team and getting people to start helping with editing and things like that. I think people are going to start to see a lot more of my face.
Nice.
Yeah, I make no claims whatsoever to be interesting, and in fact, most of the time that's not true. But like, I've done a couple where like, we've done a few podcasts now we're on video, and then I've done a couple where you just like call in or do whatever. And I can guarantee you I'm at least twice as boring without a video.
Yeah, well, see, on the radio, you have to work on your, Mark Bivins, he does a very good job of, right. Yeah. And a lot of my feedback when I'm having a conversation with somebody is purely body, right? I'm nodding or I'm looking, stuff like that. There's none of that on the radio. So if it's radio only, you really got to work on translating that feedback when somebody's talking into some other form.
Yeah, it's really interesting you mentioned that, because I'm very keen on reading body language. Like even when I do talks like on a stage, or if like I'm talking at a school or an event, I actually hate when like all the lights are off, because that means I can't see the people. So I like when it's like a well-lit room, because I like to read people's interactions and things like that when I'm speaking. And I've realized that like I've actually make it hard on myself when I'm just doing a phone call and trying to kind of lead that conversation and rely on the feedback from the other person. But yeah, I hope that with that video, it will actually make some of the conversations a lot better, because we'll be able to like kind of have that like, visual feedback and things like that. But
yeah, the chemistry will be better, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I agree.
And I think we've seen that with the pandemic and Zoom and everything taking off. And now it's like somebody was on a call yesterday and one of the guys didn't have his camera on. And I was like, hey, so-and-so, your camera's not on. He was like, uh-huh. It was a lawyer. It was that guy. But hey, I was totally comfortable saying, oh, you forgot to turn your camera on. He was like, yeah.
Yeah.
He's like,
I didn't forget.
Me of, like this issue, like when sometimes you like outside of the business world, right? Because obviously the business world, everyone goes in for a handshake, but like prior to the pandemic. But sometimes like you go in for like a shake and like someone comes in with like a fist bump and you're like, and sometimes you're not, or like when you're walking and like you're not sure like which direction someone's going. It's like the exact same problem when you're putting on a Zoom call. It's like, we're gonna have video on, no video, and then you turn on your video and then maybe their video is not on or something like that, and then like you're on and off video. So it's a fun problem.
It has been awkward.
No, I'm very,
You've always been video.
Well, and pre-pandemic, I'm always one. I'd rather go sit down in somebody's office and talk to them rather than I would never pick up the phone. I don't know that I've ever picked up the phone and called somebody at work, period.
Nope. It was Slack, and then it moved to...
It was Skype, then Slack.
That's right.
Yeah.
It was Skype first, and then
There's
it moved
some more.
Slack.
And me personally, if you can't see my face, a lot of times you think I'm mad or it's that I don't do that. Right. Yep. Oh, I have none of that going on, right? Or giggling, You know, some people are good about laughing every 10 words or so to show, hey, I'm really cool.
I actually am paying attention.
Yeah, I'm cool
relaxed.
and I'm paying attention
Yeah.
and I'm relaxed. Everything's okay. So how many podcasts have you done?
The last episode was 109.
Nice.
Wow.
Good job.
109. Yeah. I'm with obviously my son coming in. I used to do it like once a week and then went like once a month. Now it's kind of trying to catch back up. But yeah, I remember episode 0. You know, I think I had like 7 listens, and I think 3 of those were my mom.
What was episode 0? Was it
Episode
just you?
0 was like, this is me. Like, hey everyone, I want to do a
yourself?
podcast, and yeah, it was just me, like introducing, saying what I wanted.
Well, Richard, what do you? Well, here's
So have you gone back to listen to episode?
Yeah, I have.
The first?
I was about to say that I have, and it's kind of crazy how consistent I've been.
Really?
With
Okay.
like what the goal was and the kind of what it kind of turned into.
See, I look back at stuff I did last year, and I'm like, man, I was stupid.
Yeah, I just cringe at like last week.
Yes, like, wow, I'm glad I've come from there, but that's nice. You've been consistent.
Yeah, it's been great, and I hope to continue it. You know, and it's a lot of fun. I mean, it's a lot of fun, and
So outside of me, so we don't make this weird, what was your favorite podcast you've done so far?
so I had a lot of there's so much interesting topics that have been covered, but I think from a perspective of like an interesting topic versus a kind of chemistry, which is funny because there was only audio, but I connected really well with the episode on the nuclear pharmacy. It was a topic that I was just super curious about, had no idea what nuclear pharmacy was, and the person on the other phone was she was very charismatic. We just clicked, and it was just an awesome conversation, and I got to learn a lot from it. And I hope that listeners kind of felt that way as well. But I would have to say the nuclear pharmacy episode.
So for our listeners who don't know what that is, what's nuclear pharmacy?
So nuclear pharmacy is I'm not even sure. Like I would probably say you should go listen to that episode because while I still are trying to there's still so much complications around what nuclear pharmacy is, but it's basically high reactive chemicals that pharmacists have to prepare and get ready to dispense to a patient, something like chemotherapy or something that was like radioactive or something like that. That it requires a lot of safety guards in place when you're handling the medication. So picture someone that's like, I don't want to say spacesuit, but picture someone that's almost like working almost in a spacesuit, like with the heavy like artillery gloves, a huge screen in front of them. And they're having to kind of remove medication from a vial, put it in a something to dispense in. Sometimes that's a pill, sometimes it's a liquid. So, but it's basically medications that are radioactive or harmful. If you were like to either like inhale it or touch it with like your bare hands or something like that. Essentially, I guess that's like in a nutshell kind of what nuclear pharmacy is, but. I would highly recommend someone go listen to that episode to get like a full understanding.
I hope it pays really well. Because other than that, to be like, I don't think so. I think I'll pass.
It pays really well. The hours are really cool too. They work like 11 p.m. to like 5 a.m. because most of the time for procedures for nuclear pharmacy, they're done first thing in the morning. So like if you ever have like a PET scan or something like that, they inject a small amount of radioactive dye. That's compounded by a nuclear pharmacist typically.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, 11 p.m. to 5 a.m. would not be the time I would want to be doing something dangerous.
Well, I mean, you're doing like 6 hours of work and then, but yeah,
Mark,
I mean,
Mark
they're
would do that
regulated.
shift.
Yeah. Oh yeah. It's the couple of times I worked overnights at Walgreens, it was.
They say
not
really
bad.
though, human beings never adjust to that because
Right.
the light, the circadian or
It's hard.
whatever. I mean, maybe you could have lighting where you were doing that, but I don't think I'd ever adjust to it.
Yeah, that was Mark's shift in the military. That was his preferred shift, was the nighttime.
Yeah. So why
Going in at 11 and then getting off at 7 a.m.
Like Richard, my jam time is like 9 p.m. to about 2 a.m.
You're so productive during that time.
Yeah.
I don't know what it is.
because nobody else is around to bother you.
True
Yeah.
story.
That makes sense.
Yeah, I'm in bed by 9. I don't know. No, there was a time, probably younger me, I was probably up to midnight. Everybody else was in sleep. And that's when the kids were home and there was a lot more chaos. I would stay up later and sleep later. Now my time when everybody leaves me alone is like 4:30, 5 o'clock in the morning. And,
Yeah.
Nice.
I own it. I own it all.
I've never been functional at like 4 or 5 in the morning. Like when I guess about 5 years ago, before we had our kid, my wife wanted to do like this 5:30 a.m. like cardio kickboxing class. And I was like, yeah, I'll take a couple. It wrecked my week.
Huh.
Like I was done. You work out at 10 o'clock at night, no problem. 5:30 in the morning, I'm done. Can't do it.
I'm starting to get on that rotation.
The 5:30 workout or the 10 o'clock workout?
No, getting up and working out at 5 in the morning.
Yeah. And I wonder what makes the difference. You know, some people like, I work out in the morning. I'm better charged for the day. I have more energy. I have more focus.
I don't know if it's my 10 to 2 thing, but no shot you're getting me to do anything before 7 in the morning.
Yeah.
No
well,
shot.
when you're doing your 10 and 2 and being at work by 9, I'm wondering what Richard looked like.
Yeah.
You're like, okay, I just drug myself out of bed at 8:50.
Mainlining
Close.
Red Bull.
Pretty close. It was right around the corner. So,
Yeah.
all right. Well, I think we're out
We're
of time.
At our hour.
That it really flew by.
No.
Yeah. So thank you for spending some time with us today. It was great getting to know you better on a podcast I had with you, and great having you on here. Looking forward to getting to see you in person when the pandemic's over. We won't have our Connect show won't happen this year. It'll be next year, but maybe you can come see that, and maybe we'll see a couple. You go to NACDS and some of the things like that, some of those shows?
I do.
Yeah.
I do. And I haven't missed a Connect, a Pioneer Connect for the last 3 years. So definitely looking forward to seeing everyone. It sucks. I would have probably seen you all at least a couple times already in the last year.
Yeah.
But and thank you all so much for having me on. I really do appreciate it. I really enjoyed the conversation.
Yep, and thank you for working with us on the VUCA product. It was exciting to put that in all our pharmacies. We just turned off MedGuide's automatic printing for everybody. No telling how much money we've saved pharmacy just in printing paper that people would throw away. And going to continue with experimenting with different methods to try to get patients more educated.
Right,
and
just get that delivered to everybody.
Yep. So thank you for that, and looking forward to what we might do together in the future.
Likewise. Appreciate the partnership, and it's just crazy to think how much workflow and paper savings that's happening across the country, and we're hoping that this becomes a standard, and I think Pioneer's leading the way in that. So we appreciate it.
Yep. All right. Well, thank you.
Thank you for watching the Catalyst Podcast. If you enjoyed this episode, please consider liking, subscribing, and/or following us. Give us a 5-star rating on Apple Podcasts to help us reach more amazing pharmacy people like you. Follow PioneerRx on your preferred social media platform for the latest up-to-date pharmacy news and content.